This week on the Nonprofit News Feed, of course, brought to you by Whole Whale, a marketing and analytics agency focused on nonprofits. My name is George Weiner, the chief whaler of Whole Whale, and I have Nick Azulay, digital strategist at Whole Whale. Nick, go Birds, Super Bowl time. I know many people watched for the football and ate the wings, but we were there for the social impact ads and overanalyzing all of the nonprofit messaging involved because we're those people.
I'm a Giants fan, so I'm legally forbidden from saying go Birds, but I was rooting for the Chiefs to lose is what I can say there.
Enemy of my enemy.
Right, exactly. But we did see a lot of social impact messaging this Super Bowl. And George, what I have to say are somewhat kind of confounding ads. We had the Stop Hate ads with Snoop Dogg and Tom Brady, sponsored by the Foundation to Combat Anti-Semitism. In my personal opinion, the messaging there was a little unclear. But we also had nonprofit startup Come Near, of which I couldn't find any 990 information, that managed the He Gets Us campaign ads for Jesus. And businesses also had social impact hooks to George. Pfizer and the brand Hims and Hers ran ads alongside public health theming, although I think those were somewhat controversial as well. And to cap it off, we had NYU Langone. If you're in New York, you're familiar with the concept of big hospital, if you will, getting a little bit of pushback for their ad advertising their hospital system, with medical and health professionals questioning spending money on Super Bowl spots. So, George, we crunched the numbers, and a Super Bowl ad spot this year cost $8 million for a 30-second spot. We, in our advertising study, have analyzed the advertising budgets for hundreds of nonprofits, and found out that the average is about $29,000 in ad spending per year. So if we were to do that, the average nonprofit would need to combine approximately 275 years worth of advertising spending to be able to purchase a single 30-second ad spot, which, George, begs the question, is it worth it? George, what do you think? Is it worth it? We saw some nonprofits spending money here. What do you think?
I think with regard to the Super Bowl and the advertisement that goes on, is first and foremost, the medium is the message. The fact that you're about to watch something that just for the right to say those words, they paid, $267,000 a second. So you're like, okay, that is a message all in and of its own. And when a nonprofit sends it, it doesn't scream efficient use of capital. So that, you're starting already, I think, a little bit behind, especially when you are a nonprofit using that place. Now, for me, this moment, I used to call it like, if only we had this Oprah moment, I guess if we only had this Super Bowl moment where I could get to the highest peak and yell with a megaphone at all the people, then everything would change because I told them to be nice. That's not how change happens. The big companies that do this, it is usually in conjunction with a series of advertisements, a series of point of sale placement, right? Am I going to now more likely choose Pringles because they have a funny mustache in my mind floating around? I don't really care. Or Little Caesars, who has another mustache floating. I don't care because they play a different game. Nonprofits, there's no point of sale for, Langone on a national level. Like, I don't quite get it. And also with the Stop Hate ads, if you are not specific in the call to action, I guess you told people to be nice, which I think every parent can attest to. We do that every single day. Be nice to your brother. Be nice to your sister. Stop. Don't eat that. Don't hit them. It is certainly watered down message when it has to go to many people. And the more effective tactics I see are when you would take, and that's what tells me, the same amount of money and apply it toward drumbeat advertising that surrounds a certain audience with a message that has a call to action. Yeah, it takes more work, but that's because it works versus the literal, setting money on fire on a public stage in that way. The other part of me just I do like it when social good and social impact has a share of voice on one of, the largest stage with over 100 million people watching at once. I do like that idea, but in practice, I would be hard pressed to recommend it as a strategic advertising style. What's more is that people are in a chips and dip mentality, not social impact. When you reach people matters quite a bit. That's why certain types of advertising, like, I don't know, say banners, is literally throwing money out a window. Folks are ignoring those. They even have banner blockers. So when you reach people matters quite a bit there. And I think it's great to be selling people chips when they're in chips and dip mode. Maybe less so Jesus.
No, George, I'm with you. Let's save our money. Let's save it for a rainy day. A little bottom of funnel action here. A little nurture. No nurturing there. The only thing that's nurturing are the egos of Eagles fans and well, Kendrick Lamar, George, phenomenal performance. Got to be honest with you. John Batiste, great Star Spangled Banner, big fans. Shout out to my guys. All right, George, I'll take us to our next story. This is from Tech Dirt, and we've been following several threads around Trump administration policies affecting social impact. We've talked about in depth the impact of the USAID basically shut down on global NGOs and humanitarianism. This one, I wanted to pull this thread, I think, because it's something that's going to go underreported because these infrastructures and systems are not widely known. But according to multiple reports, this in particular, we cited Tech Dirt in the newsletter, is the Trump administration's Justice Department has threatened to withdraw all funding from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, abbreviated NCMEC, or pronounced NCMEC, unless it removes all LGBTQ plus references and begins dead naming trans kids. NCMEC has started complying. They've removed these documents. And it's concerning because NCMEC also operates the critical child protection infrastructure, including the cyber tip line, which helps platforms report and take down CSAM, which is abusive material. So this, George, was for me, the reason I put this story in here is one, I think it's wildly kind of underrealized that one of the most important child protection agencies in the United States is in fact not an agency, it's a 501c3 nonprofit. NCMEC is a nonprofit, and it is basically a point of contact and coordination between the public, between federal law enforcement, between local law enforcement, and also databases of known child exploitation material and tech platforms, right? All of this kind of gets funneled through NCMEC, which is at its essence literally just a standard 501c3 organization. And getting threats like this, George, is really damaging. I think it kind of goes without saying that LGBTQ plus kids are probably at particular risk for exploitation. And it's really abhorrent, quite frankly, that the Justice Department is levying the executive orders in this way, and disgusting, to be honest. So just wanted to kind of throw that in here, a little bit of a downer, but we need to be aware of this, right? Like these kind of policy changes have real impact.
There's an important nuance here between removal of DEI and internal programs and then wholesale saying, I want to remove LGBTQ from your site, your data, your programs. And here's why. Roughly, we'll call it as many as 9%, low as 7% youth identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer, according to Movement Advancement Project and surveying, which is about 3.2 million people ages 8 to 18. So it depends on the age group. Okay, so we're talking about 9% at the high end, right? Now, here's another stat from childrensrights.org. Reports have found, and this is a 2019 study, that 30%, 30.4 to be specific, percent of youth in foster care identify as LGBTQ. What's more, reports have also found that around 40% of homeless youth identify as LGBTQ+. So I'm sorry, if your organization is in charge of the well-being of children not under the care of their parents, ignoring that really, really salient fact is going to hurt your ability to help in a meaningful way. Disproportionately 4x affected by this cause. That frustrates me. That is a moment where I think you need to dig in a bit more rather than like I've actually come on the other side of DEI saying like there are times where I might yes, there are reasons why you may need to remove this to continue, but you actually can't effectively continue your work literally in the data here for identifying the most at-risk population in our community. So that, I think the technical word is sucks.
Yeah, George, it's all sorts of bad. And I think NCMEC is in particularly a sticky situation because they're really a government partner.
Sure,
As
you
much
don't
as they
exist,
want to
right?
dig in,
yes,
they may not
yes,
have a choice.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's a downer. But George, actually on a flip side, in a somewhat related topic, we have some good news. We want to bring this story from The Verge, also some reporting by myself. This is an academic project I'm familiar with out of Columbia University, but a new nonprofit created by the founding partners of Discord, Google, OpenAI, the Knight Foundation, Roblox, as incubated at Columbia University's Institute for Global Politics, has announced the launch of an organization called Roost, which stands for Robust Open Online Safety Tools. And the nonprofit consortium aims to provide modular tooling to startup tech companies to build trust and safety mechanisms into apps from the ground up. In particular, the Roost program is focusing around child safety. This was announced at the AI Action Summit in Paris. France and Macron in particular have taken kind of noticeable efforts to ramp up AI and center France as an AI hub for Europe. But George, I really, really like this, right? Because we're getting open source tools for developers that really centralize trust and safety into the very foundation of certain platforms, right? And making that open to the community, I see as just a potentially huge upside. And trust and safety, I think, has been very disparate, right? Every organization, they have different teams, there's different policies, right? Very little kind of governing policy at the federal level, right? The legislation's not doing any work here, right? And I think the more we can streamline this and make it open source, the better we're going to be able to be about keeping people safe online. So this is really exciting stuff.
Yeah, I think in similar fashion where we talked about as the internet grew of age that, connectivity for the masses is becoming a right. I think similarly access to AI requires a bit of comprehension and capacity. And that trust element really is becoming important as we see that just letting young people mess around with an open AI platform is not safe. And so I'm, excited to see projects like these funded by like some very reputable players taking a shot at like how to implement this. And yeah, France is certainly not to be overlooked. They dropped that Mistral model, which did very well out there for a while. And I'm curious to see what they're able to do now with, frankly, open source DeepSeek R1, which you can mount, load, and train and fine tune for other purposes.
Yeah, George, absolutely. All right, that takes us to our feel good story of the day, which is reported by local Axios, and that is that the Houston Television, HTV, and a local nonprofit called Spectrum Fusion have partnered together to provide adults with autism for opportunities to learn media production. The program offers training in film production and editing in professional studios, followed by potential internships at HTV working on their City Pulse show. And after completing those internships, they get networking and job placement assistance through Houston's Mayor Office of People with Disabilities. George, I love this. Practical training, nonprofit nexus, getting people involved in public access TV, a lot to love here.
Yeah, I'm very long video editing as a core fundamental skill that I think everyone's going to need. Second only maybe to spreadsheets. Like, please, learn spreadsheets, young people. Learn them.
George, for sure.
That's my
All right,
PSA.
George.
PSA for the day.
Spreadsheets.
Spreadsheets.
The more you know. All right, George, I got a joke for you. George, this brought down the house in the office, in the writer's room yesterday. So I'm super excited to share this one with you. Here it goes. What do you call a nonprofit that only works with vegetables?
I don't know. What do you call it?
George, a charitable organization.
Charitable. All right.
Charitable.
You get one chuckle out of 4.
I got a chuckle. That's more chuckles that I've gotten in months.
It's been bleak. It's been rough.
But, spring is coming, George. The harvest will be back in full bloom. Dear listeners, the
Grinds
eye
it
roll
into the ground.
is
Just
off the charts.
grinds it into the ground. Alrighty.
Man.
See you next time.
See you later, George.